So here we are in the studio. Welcome to In Focus, brought to you from the Up North Media Center. I'm your host, Kimberli Bindschatel. With me is my co-host, Anthony Weber. Tonight, we are discussing the future of film in Michigan, a special edition because the film festival is going on right now here in Traverse City. And so we have some guests who are here for the film festival. We recruited them, we dragged them over and said, please join us for a show and to have this kind of discussion. So with us is Rick Hert. He is the film commissioner from the West Michigan Film Office. Next to him is Deb Havens. She's the chair and founding chair of West Michigan Film Video Alliance. They're both sponsors of the film festival. And we also have with us today Rich Brauer. He is a filmmaker here in Traverse City and owns Brauer Productions Incorporated. He was also the Michigan Filmmaker of the Year back in 2009, awarded at the film festival. So thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
For the conversation.
Great to be here.
So what is going on in the film industry here in Michigan? Deb, do you want to, or I'm sorry, Rick, do you want to?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Well, the film industry here in Michigan is still pretty robust. I think most of us are reeling from the standpoint of just a couple of weeks ago, the governor signed a bill that said our film incentives have gone away. So we've gone from unlimited to 50 million to 25 million to no incentives whatsoever. So our competitive advantage in attracting films from the outside has gone down. That said, we have about 25 projects that got approved prior to the bill being signed that'll be filmed over the next 6 months to a year, maybe even longer. So as far as our office goes, we're very busy with feature films, and there's something going on in Traverse City right now. I've got in Grand Rapids, throughout the state, as well as TV shows, commercials. So right now, our crews are pretty active.
So just to clarify, you're saying that those contracts, if you will, were signed
Prior
under
to
the old
governor.
law, so
Right.
they still apply as far as
Correct.
the tax break. Excellent.
Absolutely, and it's not a tax break. It's actually, and it's not a credit. We actually write
Okay.
a check now. So they get a certain percentage back from the state of Michigan, and when their production is done, they go through an audit. They submit their paperwork. We actually write them a check, which is unusual compared to other states. And the program is working pretty well, but now it's life after the incentives. And I, for one, believe that we're going to be fine, and our attention's going to go to our indigenous filmmakers like Rich, and like the folks that are in the West Michigan Film and Video Alliance, and we're going to bolster what we have locally. We are blessed with incredible talent, crews, creativity, great locations, and we're going to rock and roll.
Can I just jump in on something, just to put this in perspective? Everybody connects the incentive with the film office, and really they're quite separate. The film office existed for 3 decades before the incentive. So all that's going on now is it's going back to the way it was. It's reverting back to this providing assistance to producers from somewhere else, or even within the state, to make films here the old-fashioned way. 3 decades. So people got to get that square, that the incentive, although it did start out as a tax credit, by the way, when there was a Michigan business tax, and then when the MBT got kicked out, it turned into just a cash payment thing.
Yep.
Okay.
And but still, putting it with a big picture, it's like 3 decades of an office in Lansing trying to help people make films.
Of course, the difference now is that some 38 other states have film incentive programs. So what we've done is lost a competitive advantage.
Absolutely.
But what's interesting is in West Michigan in particular, our filmmakers are mostly indie-based. They're not looking for big studio productions. You're the prime example of that. And so in many ways, it doesn't make a big difference because a lot of our filmmakers never qualified for incentives anyway. So we have been making film because we love film. And a lot of people do it very creatively. But the point is, whether the incentives were there or not is basically irrelevant to them.
Can I just add on to that? I agree with you, believe in our indigenous, but I will say that when the governor signed that, we probably had about $30 million worth of projects that were interested in coming to West Michigan blew away that day.
Yeah.
So and that means, you know, jobs and economic impact, and I was sorry to see them go. Now,
also training opportunities.
Right.
Because people don't have the opportunity to get that experience and that exposure with more high-profile kinds of productions, which was sort of key. Relationships are everything.
What's the reasoning behind that? The doing away with the incentives? Was there?
You're looking for reasons? Yeah. Looking for logic?
Roads. We need better roads. Can I jump in on something here? What Rick was leading up to, I think, and what we've all wanted out of this incentive was to create an industry. Mm-hmm. Create a functioning big industry where our young people could stay in Michigan in this green industry that we have, creating art and a marketable product. Instead of these guys using public money often in education from day one to the point where they graduate from college and then running off to California or to Louisiana or Georgia or name the other 38 states. What's the return on investment on those dollars? The state-funded education, and the kid leaves. What's the ROI on that? I'm still fuzzy on that one. Whereas if there was an industry here, why not leave them here? Let them buy houses and raise kids here. And that's what we all hoped for. And they flat out didn't leave the incentive going long enough to really determine whether it was a great success or just a medium success. And everybody on our side feels as though it was some level of success. But it needed to breathe for 10 years before they keep tinkering with it.
And not only breathe, but also be unencumbered. So my job, again, I'm in Los Angeles, I'm making calls on folks, I'm going to different conferences, and anytime that there's any negative talk about the incentives, it reverberates throughout the area, and then it makes my job a lot harder. So I agree with you. It never really had a chance to really take off and go. And I understand and believe in the power and the economics of the film industry. By the way, I'm not a filmmaker like these two. Been around this business now for 35 years, not as a filmmaker, but as an economic development guy. And I see the hotel rooms and the vendors and the money that they spend, as well as the crews and the work that happens, and it is very powerful. And beyond that is then the tourism, the buzz, everything else that happens around it. So I'm disappointed that we've lost some of that, but like I said, we're going to redouble our efforts working with our indigenous folks and go forward.
Yeah, the Alliance, the West Michigan Film Video Alliance, has been in existence for 10 years. So we started before there were film incentives, and our commitment was that we would work to get them because we wanted that competitive edge with the rest of the U.S. and the world, actually. And so we've actually lived through an environment before the incentives, when the incentives were going great guns. Then the legislature turned against incentives. Now we have no incentives. So the bottom line for us, and you know, all of these factors taken into account, is that we have to be more creative now in how we approach this industry. And one of the things that we're looking for is if you cannot get incentives for filmmaking, then organizations like ours can partner with the Michigan Film Office. We are, and certainly Rick is very influential in that regard. And you too have worked with the Film Office up here. I know you have. So one of the things that we're doing, we're generating a film contest. So we're offering a $1,000 prize for filmmakers who want to participate over a 6-month period. And we'll also do a little crowdfunding on the side. So we've never done anything like this before, but we decided the next 10 years, it's a whole different ball game. And we really have to deal with that.
I've been reading a number of comments online where people are talking about the health of the movie industry. And there's a suggestion that theater attendance is declining and that we're shifting from a movie world to a TV world. Do you feel like movies in general, or cinema in general, is kind of on a downward trend and you're trying to be creative to bolster it back up? Or is that kind of a misrepresentation and cinema is as strong as it's ever been?
I think it's a small slice of what we're talking about.
Yeah, and it's really, there's two different, at least, categories of films. You know, the big blockbusters belong in the movie theaters. They belong on IMAX. That's when they're going to pay their rent, you know, on the big guys. But then the small films don't get that kind of push because they're not willing to pay to push that into the thing. There's kind of a misconception that, wow, it was released in 200 theaters nationwide, that's as if that's some signal that it was a good film. All that really means is that somebody was willing to pay money to have it put in 200 theaters, the producers. So that's not a gauge on whether the film's any good or not. It's whether the investors felt like coughing up the cash to push it into theaters. That's it. It's as cynical as that, right?
Well, I'm not quite as cynical, but also I'm not the one that's put my money, time, and effort like you, Rich, to put it out there. So I appreciate that. I will say this, though. There has been a paradigm shift, and we're going to continue to see that in the whole delivery system. People that are younger than perhaps myself, not these two, but younger than us, they've cut the cord. You know, they're not using cable anymore.
Right.
They're watching iPads, they're watching their phones, their laptops. So, I mean, companies are now trying to figure out how that delivery system is to you and I and to everybody else. So it might start as in a theater, it might, you know, Netflix. What is Netflix bandwidth every evening? I mean, it's a huge percentage of the bandwidth of the internet is just people watching movies. And that's probably, it could be on their TV, very well could be on a mobile device. So to answer your question, I think the theater has dropped off a little bit. It's been strong for the last few years, but as far as attendance and revenue, it'll continue to I think, remain strong. But over the next 5-10 years, it's going to be fascinating on how Rich Brauer and Batman, Superman, and everybody else figures out how to make money.
It seems to me that these multiple platforms, the way especially the younger generation is viewing entertainment, would cater more toward an indie type of film than a blockbuster film. That's just my initial thought. Do you think that's correct?
Absolutely.
I think I would agree.
I mean, you need a really big screen for a big blockbuster, and most
people are willing to
indie-
pay for it.
And people love that. I mean, that's why. I mean, you're going to have date night at theaters. You know, you're not going to just look at your phone when you're.
No.
I hope. I mean, good.
Well, they
grief.
thought it would go away when VHS came out or Beta came out in the 80s, right? And it didn't.
And it grew.
So there was, right, exactly.
Yeah,
We just
actually-
watch more movies now. It's really,
It
we're more and
actually
more
grew.
addicted to movies.
But you know what's funny is that think about when we were younger and we had 3, 5, 6 channels, whatever it may have been. Now we have what, 200 channels?
At least.
Then think of the internet. So the content that we have to fill is just incredible. And now we're seeing original content again out of Netflix and Amazon, and these folks are coming up with their own stuff, and some of it's quite good.
Yeah, and the problem, sort of, for independent producers on that is that, like Sci-Fi Network and all these others, like the ones Rick just mentioned, they are now making their own films, and they don't even accept outside stuff. For the most part, unless you're like married to the receptionist's daughter or something.
Well, Sharknado is successful enough. They're not
but
needing
yeah, there's
any
going
other.
to be a rare one that gets, there's like, it's just like sports, there's that one guy or gal that gets through. But for the most part, they have their own program. Lifetime, they have their own stuff. They're doing their own thing. And unless you've got really an inside track, which most independent filmmakers do not have, they're going to make their own stuff. Now, I think what you're talking about is 15 years ago, or even maybe 10 years ago, they would welcome outside projects. Absolutely.
Because they had time to fill.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to see that. That's an expansive universe, and there's a lot of I hate the word bandwidth. I mean, a lot of channels and all the internet, what's happening there. So they're looking for content.
Well, the other thing that you have to keep in mind too is that we're not just talking about film. Really, all of the storytelling that is the basis of filmmaking is involved in every aspect of whether it's the web or commercials or whatever. I mean, a commercial is a 30-second story. So to completely discount all of the craft that goes into these other permutations of storytelling is crazy. And that's the other reason why there was so much confusion over the targeting that was basically painted on the back of the film industry. Because this is a 21st century industry. Everybody uses computers and digital media and everything else. Why on earth you would stab in the back an industry that is going to be the future is just bizarre.
Let me take that one step further. You talked about theatrical releases. Look at video games. Video games actually make more money than theatrical releases.
And some of those, some of the companies who are making the games are starting to do their own shows. I was watching one called Powers that I think might have been put out by Sony. Yeah, one of the game makers actually has started doing
With the
some of its
same
own TV
characters?
shows.
Like the
I don't know. I
characters
only
from-
watched one episode. I was just reading up on
Well,
it.
and of course, Lara Croft was
Yeah.
a video game that became a movie. There's a lot of back and forth like that now because those audiences are built in, easy to target.
But isn't
I'm
it?
curious-
Let me ask you that just quick. The video games, you have to go buy the thing at the store,
Or download. But
Or
yeah.
download them.
or you can download a
Yeah.
video game.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, or rent through
Ask your son.
a service like
Yeah, I was gonna
Piracy.
say,
yeah.
It's not targeted at you and I, Rich. But no, it's not. It's you know,
What'd you say?
it's a younger audience. But what I'm saying is, when you see
I've never done it either.
Warcraft come
It's
out,
almost like it's taboo.
Yeah.
you see the video games come out, and they hit $1 billion in the first week.
Yeah.
That's some serious digital media.
So are they buying them at the store or are they downloading them? I mean, I'm curious.
I think
Well, you're
at this
also
point
joining
they're
online
downloading- They're like
communities,
apps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, where do they, because you rent a movie, first of all, you can get most movies for free by just typing the word streaming on it, and you'll find some pirate somewhere that's done it. I've got tons of mine are that way, and you can't even find who's doing it. And you can't tell them that there's a copyright infringement because they're in somebody's basement in Malaysia, and nobody's going to go after them, and you can't find who they are.
But here's the problem, of course, and again, I'm taking your side. The problem with the whole piracy issue is if we want to continue to have great content, then somebody's got to pay. So when people steal that, somebody's not getting paid, and we don't have that opportunity to see our future. So I agree with you that piracy issue is something that you can find if you search out for it. But coming from the entertainment industry, I hope you don't. I hope that you're...
Do you think piracy is one of those things, it's just here to stay because of technology, or are there ways the entertainment industry in general can find some way to respond so it doesn't undermine what they're able to do?
I think that guys in LA that are figuring this stuff out, they've got a lot more to lose than we do. So they have got to figure this out for sure. But I can say that on my last movie, Dogman 2, somebody told me that Dogman 1 was on Vimeo. And I go, that's impossible. It had 190,000 hits of it already. On video.
Don't you think, though, I mean, I have to make an argument here. I'm from the publishing world. I'm an author, and there's a lot of similarities here between what's going on in the movie world,
Yeah,
it sounds
sure.
like, to what's been
And
going
stealing your
on
work,
in the
yeah.
publishing
Sure.
world, and especially with indies versus the big six, which is now the big five publishing houses. So many similarities, and I had some questions about that. But when it comes to piracy, to me, and I've had this conversation with other authors, my first book, I'm basically having to put it out there free to entice people to read that first book so I can sell them the second book, so I can sell them the third book, and that's very common. So to me, I don't mind if that book is pirated. It's popping up here and there, great. It's finding more readers then that are going to come and buy book 2, book 3, book 4. Now, those might end up being pirated, but to me, it's in a way, it's almost free to kind of perpetuate that.
Well,
so
that logic
that's a good
works.
example with, now you're really focused on marketing and making money off Dogman 2, so wouldn't you want people to
here's the problem is hopefully there are no investors watching this show.
Really.
Because these movies cost a lot of money. Even crappy independent movies cost a lot of money. And my films, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars out. We're way past the incentive thing, so we definitely qualify when it was there. We made 6 movies before the incentive, so it's like we're here to stay. But there's a lot of money on the table. And so for me to have a film get ripped off and be viewed by almost 200,000 people in its entirety on YouTube represents some level of cash that I cannot pay back to my investors, and they don't necessarily care about my next movie. They want to get their money back for that movie. So it hurts a lot more. This isn't just a one-off thing. These are a whole series of films, and so I have to make money back every way I can on that movie.
I don't disagree with that at all, but I do wonder, would those 200,000 people have watched that if they had to pay for it?
That I don't know.
We're into a different...
Yeah, but
Well, that's
I
so
would rather
different for
have seen
you.
it-
I mean, a single person at a typewriter, you don't have a crew that's waiting on, the next paycheck, all of that. I mean, not to say that your work is not equal or as important, but it's a different medium. And that's why comparisons are really so difficult.
Yeah. You didn't have to work with the Screen Actors Guild.
Yeah, really.
But, and also, if that would have been on Netflix, to say, so you would have got $1 per showing.
Right. But to get on Netflix, you have to go
ridiculous.
through a Netflix broker.
I understand.
And they have to channel
I understand it's
in.
not easy, but we also have Joel Petrikis,
Yeah.
a gentleman from Grand Rapids who is an indie filmmaker, and his last film actually, well, he's done a trilogy, but Buzzard actually got written up in the New York Times.
Nice.
It's currently on Netflix, and I dare say, well, his budget for this is rumored that he put it together on pop can returns. So taking bottles and cans. It seriously was a very low budget. Don't need to delineate from there, but a very low budget. And yet I saw it at American Film Market last year. It's been picked up. So there's an example of somebody that just bootstrapped, wrote it, directed it, was in it, and hats off, right? And
Wow,
like I said,
no
you
doubt.
can currently watch it on Netflix, and he's doing his third film now. That's
awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah,
that's fantastic.
So, and that's the kind of indigenous filmmaker that we want to just embrace, help,
Absolutely.
and move along. And sometimes they need some extra money, help, love to make it work. Right, Deb?
Oh, for sure.
For sure.
That's a great story, and I've heard of that. I know that story, and it's amazing when it's like one squeaks out through the hole in the fence.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
That's true.
you go.
We've been talking about some downsides to technology, specifically pirating. What do you see as upsides that new technological advances are doing for the film industry?
Well, obviously, it's ease of access. You know, people don't need to invest thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to make a movie. They can get a camera, which also takes us back to the downside, frankly, because a lot of people just think they're movie making without a lot of storyline, production skill, people skills. You would be amazed how many movies fall apart because people are fighting over, you know, who's supposed to be doing what on set. So it's a kind of the traditional, I guess, cliche is the double-edged sword. You know, it's good news and it's bad news.
By the way, coming up this week at the Traverse City Film Festival, there's a gentleman that filmed Tangerine. He did it all on his iPhone 5S.
Wow.
And it's getting some buzz. I've heard it on NPR.
Yeah, it's right.
He's done some other films that of some renown that got picked up as well. Very small budget, very indie. So yeah, the technology is, I mean, goodness gracious, we can do it on here. The cameras have actually gotten less in price. You know, the Reds for 20 grand sounds like a lot, but not when you looked at the Panaflex that used to be.
But
They
you can
went
buy
to the moon
lenses.
with less computing power than you have right there.
Absolutely.
But there's $20,000 lenses that fit on the Red. So I mean, it's like, you know, and then you have a whole box of those, and it's like.
I understand,
all of a
Rich,
sudden-
but what I'm saying, so some of the equipment cost has come down.
Yeah.
And you would know that better than I, but so, and then again, I'll go back to the delivery where I could shoot something and I can post it on Vimeo and I can get it out there and people can see my work. So I didn't have that, I think, access in the past.
Here's my response to that, Tony, is 10 years ago even, if you'd have polled a restaurant, how many people have made a movie, there would have been me and a couple others.
Probably just you.
Maybe just today, it's like, who hasn't made a movie? And so that's the flip side of it. So really, the distributors are being inundated. Where I forget the statistics, but back 15, I think it was 12 or 15 years ago, there were, I gotta fact check some of this, but there was like 1,000 movies made worldwide, that kind of thing. Today, there's like 2 million. Or something. It's numbers like that. Okay, so if you're a distributor that, you know, and you gotta wade through everything to find that one that fella made in Grand Rapids, because you kind of you never know where the next Blair Witch project's gonna come from. Right. So you have to kind of keep an eye out, because those guys want to make money. They're not into for the craft. At the distribution end, they don't care about that. They want to make money. If they could make money selling movies about a boy and his dog, they would make movies about boy and their dog. What they need is it's got to have an angle, it's got to have an edge. Shoot it with an iPhone. That's an edge. That's like a professional skier that's a great skier, but he doesn't get noticed. Dye his hair red and make it into a bow tie, and all of a sudden he's on national news. Right. That's the same game that has to be played here. That's why that iPhone thing is just a gimmick. Years ago, I came up with a slogan that says, cameras don't shoot movies, people do. And it's true.
Pretty funny.
Yeah,
Is that a bumper sticker, Rich?
I actually have a T-shirt, which I'll give you.
Please. And I'll
You're
wear
brave
it.
enough to wear it.
I'll gladly. I'd be proudly to wear it.
I'll get you one.
I like it. I like it.
But it's kind of true. It's like when I hear people talk about, God, I got the latest camera, I go, I don't care. And I'm a director of photography. I don't care what camera it is. It means nothing to me. It's not about the camera. It's about the story and about the actors and about what's it like to sit in a theater or somebody's situation where you're watching this thing. The movie-going public is spoiled rotten. And they have super high expectations. And so they're comparing films as if they're all created equal. And they are not. And so it's weird though. You get on these review sites and they go, yeah, well it dragged somewhere in the middle, so I give it thumbs down. And it's like, really? How about you come over for a minute and let me get because really, get off the couch and quit making the TV dinners and just go do something creative maybe. I don't know.
So does this kind of competitive environment where everybody now is scrambling for a place at the table in terms of distribution, do you feel like that enhances the craft of filmmaking and the art of storytelling, or has it become enough of a struggle that people are looking for those gimmicks to get noticed and to be able to make some profit off of it? Is it compromising what's happening, or do you think the competition is good and is enabling good storytelling through film?
I think it's both.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, certainly all the things that we've discussed that are a problem, but the fact that new voices can come in and new points of view, it's easier in many ways to tell stories now. And what's interesting too is to get away from the Hollywood model. We talk a lot here in Michigan about Michigan stories. And when you did Barn Red, that was an amazing story about land use up here in Traverse City. And nobody in Hollywood would necessarily even know that story, much less tell it. So, but it's been very popular. And same thing with other kind of strange ones. Remember the one, well, I'm not even going to go into Super Sucker, but Moonlight.
Escanaba in the Moonlight.
Escanaba in the Moonlight, thank you.
Cult classic.
Cult classic. I mean, that thing
love that movie.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah.
And
Jeff
again,
Daniels, that's where he got his start from, right?
right.
I mean, now
Right.
look at him. He's certainly a superstar.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
he's done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
You
but that
just won an Emmy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I had the pleasure of shooting every frame of that
That's
movie
right.
in 35 millimeter. So
No kidding.
Yeah, absolutely. Back in those days, I was trained in film, so film was the way it starts on all this stuff. And so the whole digital thing was like, I don't know what that is, and video. But the film thing, it's a very expensive medium, and that whole thing was shot. So was Super Sucker. Both shot with 35 millimeter. And I had the pleasure of shooting both of them. And both of them were cut in Traverse City at my studio.
That's so amazing.
Using a system, unlike not cutting the film, but you have conversions of time code and edge numbers come into a program. You cut the thing in video, and then those numbers have to be reconformed over to the negative and cut physically in Minnesota and then sent to the lab.
So you were
Nobody
the
knows
director of Escanaba in the Moonlight?
I was a director of photography of Escanaba in the Moonlight, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and that all
Why
happened.
wasn't that in your...
I don't know. That's still one of my most favorite memories, working with Jeff Daniels. He is awesome. And the interesting thing about Jeff, can I jump off
Please
track
do.
for a second?
No, Rich.
I want to hear those stories too.
This is really funny, I think, is that he and I are the same age. He grew up in Chelsea, I grew up in Ann Arbor. Well, we both were impressed with a movie called Easy Rider, okay? Well, from Chelsea, he was making Sleazy Rider when he was in 11th grade. On Jackson Avenue, which goes from those two towns, I was making Wheezy Rider, and we were literally using the same section of Jackson Avenue, but we never crossed paths.
Wow.
And to date, so we've known each other for a while now, but we still are not going to show each other our work.
That early footage?
We're both, somebody's got to, I'm going to die first before he gets to see it. But that's how far back these things kind of go in our hearts, And back then, we were interested in telling stories, but it was cumbersome. It was all movie film and expensive and hard and no sound and blah, blah, blah. Where today it's so easy. And Deb's spot on with that. The young voices that are out there that are brilliant, the ones that are inspired, we want to hear from them. We really do. And you've been in education for a long time, I know, and those are the students you want to hear from, are the ones that are bright. You want to enable them as best you can. What better thing than to give them a camera that doesn't require a light or...
Can I shoot off that, by the way? I was at a Produced By conference last month, and I met 2 individuals that do Vine. Does anybody know what Vine is?
Yes.
It's real short videos.
6 seconds. These guys are 6-second storytellers. Okay, one guy was homeless a year ago and now has 4.7 million followers. The other guy about the same number of followers. And they actually do scripts, half page, and they probably post 2-3 times a day, every day. And they have all these followers, and they are filmmakers and storytellers. With these huge followings, and they are now making a living out of doing 6-second videos with product placement. I'm sorry, I saw your face. Go like, now, wow.
It's a great idea.
How crazy is that?
I wonder if I can do it in 5.
Isn't the average attention span now about 7 seconds? So they're right in the window.
Yeah, and there's other mediums like that that give you a few more seconds, but nonetheless, think about the paradigm shift that we've had, where these guys now have nearly 5 million followers on a daily basis. And that's quite an audience. And I was actually relaying that story on to some tourism folks that I work with. And they said, well, we'd like to know them because we will pay them to promote our area or our product or whatever the case may be.
You know what's brilliant about that is that the market is people at work. They don't have a lot of time. They're supposed to be working, but they might have 6 seconds.
Well, and if you do Facebook, if people that do Facebook, you go through and there's videos, right?
Yeah.
And you catch that. Vine is just like Facebook. You literally just scroll through it, and these videos pop up, and they're these little vignettes, for lack of a better word.
Do you worry that the fragmentation of story, maybe not fragmentation, but the condensing of storytelling to 6 seconds, so to speak, has implications about how people will view long-form storytelling, like a 90-minute movie? Or do you think those are 2 separate things that people
I think it's
want
2
to traffic
separate.
in both?
You know, I think, you know, again, so you have 60 seconds of unused time in your day, and you look at Facebook. I mean, I'm sorry, many of us do it. I mean, right, no matter, so, you know, you're on the bus. What is this Facebook? Yeah. So, but I'm just saying, so you fill those little moments with that. Doesn't mean that I still don't want to go and see feature films, because I do, or...
Well, you can't escape in 6 seconds the way you can into a full feature
That's
film.
a really good point.
To me,
exactly right.
watching
Good
a
point.
movie or these, I think the TV show binging that's going on, you know, get a series and watch the whole first season in one weekend, you know, kind of thing. It's really escapism, and I think we don't want to live in this life with our boring job and our whatever. And it's almost a drug of choice, or something, you know, to escape and vicariously live in that world for a while, whether it's 90 minutes or... Isn't that part of what the experience of movie
Well, for one that likes
is?
to binge, I don't know if I would agree. Personally, I don't know if that's just, I mean, there's some really strong, I think of Game of Thrones that HBO does. $5 million per episode they put in that. It's solid, it's good, and I save them up so I can watch them and, you know, and love them. So I guess that's escape, but it's just sheer entertainment for me.
My daughter in Chicago, I went to visit a while back, and she binged on Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Ready.
Orange is the New Black.
There you go. See, so and you guys, what are yours?
Yeah. Psych.
Psych, okay.
Oh, I was so hooked on the Newsroom.
Oh,
Yeah.
Me too.
that was awesome.
One of my absolute favorites in the last couple
And see, and
of
I
years.
actually watched that with my wife on TV, and we loved it. And then I travel a bit, so while I fly, so I download them and I watch them here again.
And catch new things.
And right, because
There's
it's
dialogue in that.
goes, you know, Aaron
Aaron
Sorkin,
Sorkin.
it's such an amazing. What I'm saying is, so I watch them again and catch more stuff. So, so then I've actually watched it on a couple of mediums.
So is the rise of TV's popularity changing the way filmmaking is done? And I'll give a little more specifics here. When you've got a TV show that goes over seasons, and you've got time to invest in a character, and you've got, you know, years in essence in which you're following a particular story, And then you've got all the spin-offs, and you have all kinds of discussion groups online, and people watch, like when I watch The Walking Dead, you can go onto AMC and do something interactive as the show's going. Are those types of things, those innovations, making film need to be more innovative in some of those areas, or is film remaining solid simply in the form it has been for however long now? And I realize it's changing, but do you feel like film, the cinema experience, is safe in that form or solid in that form, or do you think you'll see an increasing attempt to try to mimic some of the things that TV is able to accomplish?
You mean bring like 13 sessions to a giant movie screen or something?
I was reading something about maybe a trend toward films being an opening to a story and then creating stuff online that's a follow-up, whether it's short films to go with it. And I think Marvel might even be doing that somewhat between their big blockbuster films. Now they've got several TV shows that are connecting episodes. Do you think that is
it's cross-promotion, basically. I mean, it's marketers have figured out that, you know, again, it's a target audience that you can take from one medium to another. The whole transmedia thing, you can bring in gaming, you can bring in the interactive elements. Transmedia is, and selling t-shirts. I wouldn't say that film is safe necessarily, but film, it has its charms, and nobody has really gotten tired of it. I mean,
you remember at 17 taking a gal to the theater, right? That's very different than...
Yeah, if safe wasn't a great word, I was just trying to think of, is there pressure within the film community to try to mimic some other successful trends in other platforms, or is there a general consensus that that cinema experience, that 90 minutes, the date night movie, is in and of itself a real solid platform that doesn't need to try to hook into other cool things that are happening, but it's strong and will remain strong?
You know, that's really pretty heady stuff.
Is it dependent on popcorn or no popcorn?
And what is a good popcorn?
You know, to me, that's such a deep and big question. It's kind of like for 15 years ago for us to say the internet was really cool and we haven't yet discovered all the uses of it. Remember?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember seeing my first Ford commercial and going online to look up www.ford.com. That was amazing, right? 20 years ago, whatever. I think we're right there now with the whole delivery system and the multiple platform. I think we don't fully appreciate and understand how we're going to be entertained in the future. And it's going to come at us from a lot of different ways.
You know that movie, Fahrenheit 451, where the big screen is going and suddenly they stop, you know, and they say, Laura, what do you think should happen next? You know, and then she tells people, and in the film, you know, I want you to do this, and it's interactive to the point where it's responsive, and boom, the movie takes off in that direction. I don't know if that, I mean, it's certainly not possible at the moment, but it could be. And when you think about we, I suppose there's some interactive capacity that hasn't been explored yet.
I would jump in with, kind of to respond to that, is that there's the motivation behind making a film comes from different places. Some people just want to make it big and move to LA and have a big car. Some people don't care about that, but they have a story they want to tell, and they're going to try to tell that story no matter what the outcome. It's the kind of thing we tell young people all the time, where just follow your passion, follow, you know, all that stuff. And many people buy that. I certainly do. And if you build it, they will come kind of mentality. So part of that motivation, if it's coming from the heart and if there's coming from a voice that needs to be expressed, those people are going to make films no matter what happens, whatever delivery medium happens to be there at any given time. And that's where a lot of independent filmmakers live. And then it's just a matter of which uncle wants to cough up the cash for you. And if it's going to be on a little DSLR with a, you know, lens and no lights and a microphone on the camera or whatever, that might be all it takes. And they might have borrowed the camera. So it's like, the range is so huge, but at the end of the game, these young people are so sharp and so bright, and they're also tuned into the expectation of the market, of their market. That's what makes me smile when I hear about these 6-second things. It's like, that is really that they're making stuff for themselves. And that's what they want to see.
4.7 million others.
Well, but there's so many like them.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. It's for their generation, and we can keep making long-form films around, and because we're speaking to our generation. But I was even thinking of. It's interesting you brought that 6-second thing up. What's that called again? Vine.
Vine.
Okay. I was actually thinking of carving up any of my films into little short webisodes with some level of cliffhanger on them, but maybe make them 8 minutes long. Just basically carve the thing up in 10 pieces. Right. And find a little, I mean, theoretically my films have some interest and they have some level of plot. And so you just basically make your cut right there and then just kill it. Cut to black, boom. And then people are like, what? Wait, and they
want more.
And then they want more. Right, exactly. And so it could be that there's a morphing of feature filmmakers like me that are going to adopt that kind of episodic short format for exhibition.
Well, they have, and the other element of that is that you can charge less because by the end of it, you're going to have accumulated more as people actually watch element after element.
And they're hooked with you. And then they might be interested in seeing the behind the scenes.
Right.
They might be, whatever. And when they're only getting $1 a throw, man, you got to have a lot of customers out there. And
I wanted to throw out, maybe change a little bit here. Rich, we're lucky to have you in West Michigan, Filmmaker of the Year. I remember being there when you got that from Michael Moore as well.
Competition was a little light that year.
But
Don't be so
I'm not so sure that's true. But I also want to point out 10 West Studios and Harold Cronk and what he's been able to do in Manistee, so not far from here.
Okay. He's
produced 11 films in Manistee. Some of those were incentivized, some not. He did a film called God's Not Dead that they did it for $2 million. Unfortunately, they didn't film in Michigan, but 115 at the box office, and it's now on Netflix.
Right. Those are through PeerFlix, I think.
Exactly.
So there's a partnership with a company out west that is helping push
Absolutely right. They're the ones that financed it.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that I want to come back to the talent that we have here. And I work with filmmakers. I was just on a set a couple nights ago. Edgar Struble is his name, and he's actually a partner with 10 West Studios. Crowning Jewels is a little film that they're doing. Rich, you'd love it. I mean, the crew was 10, 12 people, and
nice.
Yeah, right. And they're using all local cast, and they're pumping this thing out. And we have great talent. We have the locations. We have the creative. We want to be able to keep our folks here doing that.
One of the things I'm wondering if you've heard, that in West Michigan, we're like the third largest producer of faith-based film.
Heard the same?
So out of the entire nation, we're third largest. So that's a significant population that's in response to those particular producers. And rarely do we hear that kind of market really pushed or promoted through the film office or anybody else. That's a huge statistic, and it's a lot of money and a lot of investment comes into those kinds of films. So it's interesting. I don't know how that could impact our future, but they certainly are continuing to work.
Now, what about documentaries? We've been talking about entertainment for the whole conversation, but it seems to me, just as a TV watcher, that there are more and more great documentaries. Are they on the rise as well? And this
Michael
must
Moore.
all be, well, not that kind of documentary.
He's the most successful documentarian of all time.
Of all time.
Definitely.
So you got to give him a huge credit. But I watched a film today, actually, about The Nation, a newspaper that's been around, or a magazine, for 150 years, done by one of his producers. It was incredibly well done. Incredible documentary. So I think they are on the rise because what's happening is, again, they're having more opportunities to show those. Before, I think it was a smaller audience, bigger audience, and a lot more.
Right, HBO has its own complete category of docs. So
Were they incentivized though, or what's
Sure.
happening to help? Is that part
They
of
were.
the film
They were.
industry, or is
it's
it
rare
looked
that
at
a
as
documentary would
separate?
be more than what was the basement, 100,000?
100,000
was
So it's
was
rare
the
that a
minimum.
doc would be 100,000 or more. And the problem with docs, from a production standpoint, is they generally don't make any money. So it's a total passion thing, and you literally grab a camera and an idea and run with it. So it's usually a crew of 3. I mean, not Michael Moore's; he's just a bigger deal. But generally, they're really they're 100% passion.
Yeah, they're a
Absolutely.
passion project.
It's like 95% passion, 5% technology, and the ones that seem to work are when they still have that 95% passion, but are able to throw in 40% more on technology and good quality camera work and lighting, because that's what stands out. It's like, wow, instead of getting seasick because the artist is so passionate that the camera work, whatever, it's just a camera, it's my cell phone, whatever, who cares?
So, Rich, the one I saw today called Hot Ink, I would recommend it.
There you go. But see, those are the ones that are at festivals.
It was professionally done.
Yeah.
I mean, it was well cut. Graphics were great. I mean, it was very well done.
Look at the one on Glenn Campbell.
They got to have a
that
story
HBO did.
too.
Isn't there there's a premiere documentary Friday night at the film festival, isn't there? I was listening to something about it on the radio the other day. I think one of their big films at the end is a documentary.
Again,
I forget what
documentaries
one.
are not created equal.
Yeah.
You know, some of the ones, they can be built with one person and a camera and a laptop. Or they can have a crew of 30 and take 6 years and be funded by Exxon. I mean, it's like you could do anything with documentaries. And even the word documentary I kind of struggle with, because most of the time, from a journalism standpoint, when you say documentary or think documentary, you generally consider a fair and balanced capturing of some story. That's, I think in the purest sense, that's what a documentary is. Most of the time, what are in documentaries it's more like a thesis.
It's an opinion piece, maybe?
Yeah, an opinion piece, very much.
Point of view.
Hey, I could make a documentary on what a horrible place Traverse City is, if I wanted to. I could just feature the stuff
have
that
absolutely no content.
Wait till winter.
Sorry, Rich. Wait till winter. Sorry, no content whatsoever.
some communities are harder than others, but I could do it. I could paint a picture that this is a horrible place to live. Any filmmaker could.
Sure.
And that's the problem with documentaries.
There are those who weren't very happy with the portrayal of Flint, I can tell you, from Roger and me too.
Well, right, but that's right. Exactly. And so it's purely what do you want to point that thing at?
There's another element that is very interesting in this whole thing. It's documentary and it's entertainment, and that is the kind of limited access, unless you actually do have a camera, to go and make a film. In other words, my interest in filmmaking is in screenwriting. So I have 6 scripts that I've finished, and now I'm busily entering them into contests and whatnot, because trying to sell a screenplay, especially from Michigan, is like near hopeless.
With no agent.
No agent.
Yeah.
So you even have to sell your screenplay in a way through a film festival to get an agent. And the same limitation exists when it comes to distribution, or it comes to finding investors, because Michigan did have a huge, it was a spotlight, and there were a lot of people coming here looking for talent because the incentives drew them in. Now those folks are gone, and a lot of the talent seem to be as well. So that is going to continue to be our challenge, I think, is how we establish ourselves, reach out beyond our borders, and manage to maintain an industry here despite all odds.
Well, and what is the future? You're kind of taking us there with the few minutes we have left. That was going to be my next and last question, is where do you see us going? I think you just took us there a little bit the other day.
You teach a class to an upcoming film generation, don't you?
Well, that's exactly right. I just finished with Grand Valley State University. They've created a film every summer. A lot of schools have been doing this, even before the incentive, and they're training young people that have hopes and dreams and have a voice. And you could go to dental school, you could go to whatever, but this is a film output here in Grand Valley. And I was blessed to work with these young students, 25 of them in this class, and we treated it like a real film. This was not a student production. They were students working on a professional production, is the way I couched it, which was kind of new for these guys. And so my scrutiny was much higher. My expectations was way higher. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a really nice little competitive film. And but students worked on it. They got exposure, and just like any educational situation, you learn what you're good at or what you like. You also learn what you're not good at or what you don't like, and both of those are valuable in the educational system. You know, and so these guys came off of this thing really, really well, and I'm really proud of them. And I learned as much as they did, I think, on this stuff.
We have a nonprofit in state called Creative Mini that has been doing research financed by the federal government to say that Michigan has a $3 billion creative industry. We are supported by people like Rich and Deb. We're lucky to have them. And we're going to continue to have an output of creative films, digital games, creative digital media, whatever the case may be. I don't think we're going to see those filmmakers from outside flock to Michigan as we did in the past, and I for one will miss them. But don't discount. We're not out. You know, we will continue to put out great products out of Michigan, and like I said, I'm lucky to work with these two and several others that are very creative, and will continue to be so.
Deb, I cut you off. Do you have a last thought?
No, I'm very grateful for these two as well. I mean, we could not do anything without a film office regionally. And as a matter of fact, I think Rick is going to be the only film office left in the state, certainly the only film commissioner. And that has been critical for us because he can make the trips out and introduce us to people who normally, you know, just fly over the state. So if we didn't have that, and if we didn't have filmmakers like Rich, that have established a platform and then pulled people in and trained them and taught them and created so much of a conversation around film, the culture of film, and made money, if we can be bold. So thankfully, I have to agree, you know, even if we don't have incentives, all this was going on, it will not stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I would echo all that, but it's kind of like those of us that have been around a while, we're here way before the incentive showed up, and then we're going to still be here after it. So while it was here, sure, I had to be a fiscally responsible producer, I had to tap into it. Otherwise, my investors would
wonder at your sanity.
I'd be out in cement overshoes in the bay, you know, and I wouldn't even blame them.
And that would be in the documentary about the bad thing in Traverse City.
Exactly. Filmmaker murdered out in the Bay.
Right.
Yeah, could happen. Might still. But that's exactly right. That might be the name of it.
That's the hook.
That's the hook, yeah.
There you go.
It's a great idea. Well, that'd be on a festival for sure. Shoot it with an iPhone.
As you're going down.
An underwater iPhone?
Right. Better yet, hook it to a boxer dog or some kind of dog. Shoot the entire film with an iPhone with a dog.
This is the creative thing I'm telling you about.
Right.
Yeah. I think linear. Rich thinks here.
And I think the last scene, the dog goes off the dock during the Cherry Festival and
Yeah.
finds you at the bottom of the lake with your cement shoes.
Going like this.
Yeah.
You know, but really,
Wow, did we digress very quickly?
marketing potential there at all. The only film shot by a dog.
I'm interested already, so just let me know when you start filming.
There's your investor.
Yeah. I've got a couple bucks.
I'm glad we got that settled. So
Can we talk afterwards then?
Yes,
That's a good
absolutely.
idea.
Okay.
I'll thank you, all three of you, Rick, Deb, Rich, for
My
joining
pleasure.
us. Thank you, Anthony, too, for co-hosting with me.
For the film idea I just had.
Exactly, yeah. Well, you need an investor.
And by the way, you guys do a really good job with setting that stuff up and
Thank you.
doing topics that are
Thank
cool.
you.
And
Yeah.
I think people are
Thank
interested
you.
in this kind of stuff.
thanks.
And so you guys
We're having a good time.
you guys rock, yeah.
Hopefully the audience at home is having a great time as well. And thank you for watching In Focus.